Hey, what's up, wrestling fanatics and fans? You're listening to the True Wrestling Podcast. Today, I'm with Jeff Byers, the voice of Penn State Wrestling. Jeff, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
It looks like it's pretty warm there. You're outside.
It is crazy. This is like the nicest day I can ever remember in my life in Pennsylvania in February. We're supposed to be getting up to about 70 degrees today. We're probably in the upper 50s now, but I'm taking advantage of it. I said we're going to have to go outside for this one.
That's awesome. You know, I hear a number of the guys from the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club are training at the training lab, and they tell stories about sitting outside in the sun when it's 30 degrees. That's not going to be it today.
No.
Be easy, vitamin D. um, I want to kind of just go back, and I've read a bunch about you. I've listened to you for years, but tell us what attracted you to sports as a kid.
I don't know exactly what it was. It was just something I did from day one. I mean, I have pictures of me at like 2 years old with a New York Jets helmet on, and I was not a Jets fan. It was just the helmet that my dad could find readily available at that time. And so, I was a Steelers fan and Pittsburgh sports fan pretty much from the day I was born. But, my dad followed athletics, but not passionately. I mean, he was a really good high school wrestler, was a state runner-up in Pennsylvania. But, and again, followed sports, followed Penn State, but not closely. I mean, he wasn't a diehard. He would check it out. And because of my interest, I mean, we did go to a ton of Penn State sports events, football and wrestling, but we really did a little bit of everything over the course of my childhood. But we moved to a neighborhood that was filled with former Penn State players and their families when I was 7 years old. And it's just all that we did when we got home from school. We, put our backpacks in the house and we went down to, we had a church yard, and we either played wiffle ball or football or something sports related from 7 years old on. And it's just what everybody in our neighborhood seemingly everybody did, and it was just it was a really fun way to grow up. But sports was just a big part of my life from again as early as I can remember. I'm not exactly sure what attracted me initially. I've just always grown up with that passion, and I can't imagine not having it.
Gotcha. Now, you tried to walk on in college for the Penn State football team?
Yeah, I was a very average, and that might be putting it kindly, high school player. But, I obviously loved Penn State, loved football, and it was one of those things where I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not going to regret going out and not making it. I will regret if I never even give it a shot. I trained pretty hard for me for that year leading up, and made it to the cuts right before the week before the blue-white game. It was a really neat opportunity. I mean, I don't regret anything about it. I had played rugby for about 3 months before that, my first year, and don't regret anything about that. It was one of those things where rugby kind of coincides with football, and I really did enjoy the rugby experience. I never did completely understand the roles and what all we were doing. I just kind of ran around as they told me to, and had a lot of fun with it. But I really decided that getting into sports journalism and or broadcasting was going to be my course to kind of stay connected with sports. It was fairly apparent at that point that there was not going to be any professional careers for years truly.
Before we get to your journalism and the radio, how did you view wrestling and football at that early part of your life? I mean, did you see them similarly, or...
When I was young, so wrestling, my dad was a high school coach at a small high school close to State College, Penn Valley High School, and he was an assistant there when I was a toddler. And so for me, at that age, wrestling was like the biggest thing out there. And I mean, there was a school called Sugar Valley.
Yeah.
The Penn Valley would wrestle, and to me, that was like the end all be all in the sports world. It's like, wow, this is the Penn Valley Sugar Valley dual meet. I remember going to those matches and just thinking what a cool experience it was. And I loved going to Rec Hall. I mean, Rec Hall, some of my greatest childhood memories are not just going there for sports events, although certainly that's part of it. There was an NCAA volleyball championship that we went to. We went to a ton of basketball and wrestling meets and all of those events that were held at Rec Hall. But football was just like an entirely different world. And I don't remember the first time I went to Beaver Stadium, but I just remember being in awe every time we were in there about just how big that facility was, how awesome the crowd was, and obviously, Penn State was pretty good for all of my childhood, so there were big games, big opportunities, and I viewed them differently. I don't know that I ever necessarily thought to myself one is better or more favorite than the other. It was just kind of different seasons, and really, at that stage of my life when I was a kid, wrestling and basketball were they coincided, and we all did both, over the course of the winter. So, basketball was in there, and then we'd go right into baseball, and I had a great passion for baseball too. So it was just kind of, as the seasons changed, it's like, okay, let's get into the next sports season and follow whatever season it's in. So, I definitely, as I got to high school, from a passion standpoint in following the sports, football and wrestling became the two that I was most passionate and followed most closely. But I still stayed in connection with the other sports. And again, I really do just love going to sporting events and the different atmospheres that all of the sports provide.
As an aside, when I was in a youth wrestling club, I think Coach Lorenzo was an assistant. He invited our entire team to Rec Hall, right? I'm sure he did to tons of youth teams.
Yeah.
And the intensity in that room and the smell, it was visceral. But then I think I got invited to this football game as another youth thing, and different smell, different atmosphere, but still had that same visceral feeling to me. Like they're palpable in my memory 40 years later.
Yeah, it is funny. You talk about, at least I think most people connect sports and being there with the sights and the sounds, and that certainly is a big part of it. But I think you're exactly right. The smell of grass on a Friday night at a high school football game is something special. And a wrestling room, definitely, if you've ever been in a room when you walk in, yep, back in a wrestling room right now.
Yeah. And my wife thinks I have a mental disorder because there's something about marching bands. I never played in the band, but something that just triggers youthful memories of being at a football game, whether it was at Penn State or Selinsgrove, whatever, just good times. Now, I've heard you mention that you were lucky to get into WRSC, but I've never heard how that happened.
Yeah, so my freshman year at Penn State, I had a buddy. I was leaning pretty heavily toward wanting to get into journalism, and just thought sports writing. I always enjoyed writing and still enjoy writing, and I just thought that was going to be my career path. And I had a friend that was I don't know if he interned or just was helping out part-time at the campus radio station that summer of my freshman year. And he said, yeah, you ought to check it out. It's kind of fun. So I said, all right, let's do it. So we went up there, and it was just fascinating to me. I mean, I had followed radio. I don't know that I grew up wanting to be in radio or consciously thought about it, but my folks will tell the stories about, I would be out in the backyard by myself, throwing the football up in the air and, doing my Keith Jackson impersonation or Brent Musburger or whoever. It's like, and I'm, the quarterback and the receiver and the tackler and all of that. And I'm calling the plays as I'm developing. It's like, oh, what a catch by Kenny Jackson. And I'm doing this stuff when I'm a kid in the backyard. So I guess to some degree, there was an interest there from a very early age. And I loved the tailgate shows on our local station, WRSC. At that time, it was Kevin and Wendy. And I ended up getting to work with Kevin for a number of years, which was just, it's still kind of a surrealistic thing for me, because it was, it just felt like an unbelievably cool world when I was a kid to be able to go up. And, I think there were a couple of games where I got on that tailgate show because they would go around and interview the kids and really anybody that was up there, just asking where they're from, who's going to win today, and that sort of thing. But they hammed it up and made it a lot of fun, and it was something that I always listened to. So, I definitely got the bug once I got to the campus station, and there were a couple of people there that really kind of took me under their wing and showed me the ropes, and started doing a lot of both news and sports there. And then one of the guys that worked at the campus station was working part-time at WRSC as well. And he said, they really need board ops for the fall sports. If you're interested, I can get you, in, and you can interview and put in an application. And so I did that and started, again, just working the board, running the board for the high school football games. I don't think I ever ran the board for the Penn State football games, at least not that I remember. I think we always just went out to those. But I started doing some other sports then over the winter, and the sports director at the time, Jerry Fisher, knew that I followed Penn State wrestling very closely and passionately, and he got asked to do the TV for the Penn State Iowa meet. So the first match I ever did was Penn State Iowa in front of a sold out rec hall, and I was nervous as could be. And I don't know if that audio is anywhere. I'm probably grateful if it's not, because I was just trying to contain my excitement and kind of figure out what it was that I was supposed to be doing. But I was allowed to do kind of color for the rest of that season. And the following year, I started doing the broadcast when I was a junior at Penn State, when I started, really kind of doing them full time. I didn't do all of the away matches, but the ones that I could with my class schedule and everything I did. And then by the time, that first year I graduated, it was my baby. Jerry had kind of decided he wanted to concentrate on women's basketball, and he did that for a number of years. And so I really was just very fortunate. It was kind of good timing, and just the fact that I think was the only other person at the radio station that really followed college wrestling closely and passionately that could fill in for him when he got the opportunity to do the TV broadcast.
It sounds like your first experience was the equivalent of broadcasting a Super Bowl for the first time. Like, that's your first.
Yeah.
And have you ever been as nervous as that event going into a broadcast?
No, it was funny. The first time I was ever on air was for a newscast at the campus station, and I was petrified. It was exhilarating and exciting, but I also, I don't think I knew how many people were listening, so in my mind it was probably a handful, and it's like, okay, well, if I mess this up, no big deal. In my mind, everybody's listening to Penn State wrestling around here, and again, the fact that it was the Iowa meet, yeah, for me, it really was the equivalent of the Super Bowl, because, again, football and wrestling had kind of become the two greatest passions for me in terms of following Penn State sports, and I had grown up really idolizing a lot of those guys on the wrestling team, and Rich Lorenzo was obviously just an amazing coach, an amazing person, and to this day I probably have learned as much from him just about life as anybody other than my folks and grandparents. He just was a wonderful person in terms of giving life lessons, and I'm eternally grateful that I fell into the gig, and yeah, to have that as your first one is, yeah, it would be, the Daytona 500 is your first race broadcast, or the Super Bowl for your first football broadcast, or the Masters. For me, it's the equivalent of all of that, and yeah, it was very, very cool stuff. I was absolutely. I couldn't have been more nervous. I don't even know if I was able to get through much of that match without stuttering and stammering, because it was just, it really was kind of a surrealistic thing for me to have that opportunity to do that at that stage of my life.
Now, so how long have you been doing this? 33 years?
Yeah.
So at what point did you think, oh, I'm going to keep doing this, and I want this to be, part of who I am going forward?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because I love doing it, right? But when I'm coming out of school, I'm kind of thinking, well, eventually I'm probably going to try to work my way up the broadcast ladder and get into a bigger market. And actually did that for a year, and went to KDKA in Pittsburgh as a sports producer, and loved that experience. But one of the deals we made was that I would be allowed time off to go do the Penn State wrestling broadcast. So I drive up for the home meets, and would meet them out for the away meets during that time, and obviously took time off for the conference tournaments and for the NCAAs. And, so I guess, and there was another year in there where I worked at a smaller station, kind of trying to help a friend out in Punxsutawney, and did that for a year. And same thing. It was like, yeah, I'll do I was doing all of their high school sports for that year. But I'm like, yeah, the priority though is still that I do the Penn State wrestling. So, that was probably 10 years in that I took the Pittsburgh job first, and I guess at that point, if you're that committed to continuing to do it, you know that it's something that you want to do long term, and that you're not willingly going to give up anyway.
Right. Now, I know that you're in between, I don't know, is it stations or positions outside of this, but within just wrestling, it's almost a fairy tale, right? You've been there for 33 years, and the team just seems to be getting better and better. It's almost like something you wish for in your life. Just describe that feeling as the team, 33 years, and now we're in the middle of a dynasty.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things, I mean, it is. It's a fantastic experience, and it was, one of those things where pretty early on in working with Rich Lorenzo and his staff, it was like, man, I really hope this program gets to win a national title, and I hope I get to be there and get to call it when it happens. And, there were a couple of years where I think they had a shot at it, and things didn't come together. Obviously, 94 probably is the most significant. I know a lot's been written about that, but, Harry McCoy decided to understandably take the Olympic year, but if he hadn't, that team certainly was going to be right in the mix anyway for the national title. And when Cal came, I certainly knew that it was a possibility that Penn State would win a national championship, maybe a few along the way. And I remember one of the first interviews I had with Cal when he came here was, his aspirations for the program, and it wasn't necessarily, we want to win national titles, and he did put the S at the end, but he said, we want to be consistent with what we're doing and with the approach that we take, and we, think that we're in a good position here with this program and the recruiting and the support that it has to make multiple runs and be in contention on a pretty consistent basis. And obviously, that was an understatement in terms of what they've been able to do. But what's been really cool for me is not only are they winning these titles, and again, that is no question very cool and fun to call, but they're doing it with really, really good people. And I just, through the years, I've been very fortunate. There's been a lot of good people that have come through the program and a lot of good wrestlers. But the caliber of person and family that Cal brings in is just really impressive. And it's just neat to be around those people that are driven to succeed, not just in wrestling, but in life, but also have a perspective on things and, like to have fun, like to enjoy life, and and have visions again above and beyond the wrestling mat. And it's just neat to pick the brains of the kids and us, and maybe even more so the parents. I mean, David Taylor's parents, I just don't think you're going to find better people other than the Penn State coaching staff. And it's neat to get their perspective on how they've arrived and how their kids have arrived at this place in their life.
Right. Something that I don't want to say I borrowed from Coach Sanderson, but before he even got to Penn State, I was talking to him at NCAAs when he was at Iowa State. Is if you give 100% of your attention to all the details necessary, the winning and losing just sorts itself out. And that's kind of it's words to live by life.
Yeah, and it's amazing the degree to which the overwhelming majority of kids that come into the program buy into that. And it's just, it really is a different mindset than what I was ever around in wrestling, right? I mean, all of the wrestling coaches, and really good guys, man. And Rich Lorenzo, it was one of them. We're going to outwork you. And it's going to be a grind, and we're going to almost punish you in that room to make it seem easier. And I'm not going to tell you the Cal's practices aren't hard, because they are.
Yeah.
But there's a different mindset there where it's, hey, let's come in, work on wrestling, have fun with it, figure some things out, and then they're just better than anybody I've ever seen in terms of understanding how to get a peak performance. And it's not just, you're going to outwork everybody. It's working smarter. It's being really thoughtful about the approach in terms of giving your body a chance to recover, making sure you're getting enough sleep, getting the right nutrients in your body. And it is a really comprehensive approach. And the mindset is a big part of it. And, I'm always amazed and impressed with the number of kids that have come through and you talk to, and it's like, all right, it's nationals, you got to win. It's like, yeah, I want to win, and that's my plan. But if I don't, it's a wrestling match, and life will go on, and I have other things, down the road I want to succeed in. So it's not that it's not important. It's not that they're not putting everything they have into it. But I do think part of the success is that these guys aren't going out there and it's, this year is a failure if I don't win the title, or, all of these years that I put into the sport, if I don't win championships, it's not worth it. And I do think that's an important part of why Penn State has the successes, is these guys are going out and truly enjoying and embracing the opportunity without trying to put the pressure on themselves of, all right, it's win or this is a failure. And I just think it's a subtle little difference in terms of the mindset, but I think it's an important one. And I think these guys also have just a good approach to the overall mental health of their kids, where again, you've got to get some time away from the sport. You've got to, take some time to focus on you. And I think Penn State, this program has been a little ahead of the curve when you start looking at some of the mental health issues that are out there in athletics and in society in general, in trying to address that and make these kids understand and feel that they're loved and they're going to be appreciated regardless of the success on the mat. It's more about, hey, yeah, go out and become the best you can be, give your best effort, and we're cool with however that works out for you at the end of the day.
Yeah. Now you've brought up Coach Lorenzo, Coach Sanderson. You've been there for 4 different head coaches. And I'm not going to say don't say anything else about Sanderson or Lorenzo, but could you talk to just something about Sunderland and Fritz as well? And include Lorenzo and Sanderson if you have more to say.
Yeah, no, Troy was just a fantastic person, and I kind of gathered some stats trying to help him keep his job. To be honest with you, I obviously did not know Cal Sanderson was waiting in the wings. I didn't know that was a possibility, but I really thought Troy was just a guy who tried to do the right thing all of the time, and I think his love of Penn State and of the student athletes came through, and I think the kids that wrestled for him will tell you that he was a guy that really did try to put everything together to give them the best opportunity. And he had some visions for the program that Cal realized in terms of creating a regional training center. Troy had fought for that and just was rejected by the administration at the time.
Yeah.
I think to a large degree, Troy does not get enough credit for what he did. I think there were some things working against him, especially over the last couple of years with the way some of the alumni were handling things behind the scenes, and maybe making it a little more challenging than what I think it should have been for him. But yeah, Troy, is just a great friend. He was, the one that was, of all of the coaches that I've been with, he was the closest to me in age, and so I think we had more of a friendship, and not that I would consider all of them friends and would do anything for any of them. And John Fritz and I have become probably better friends since he left coaching. And again, not that we weren't friends. And I will say all four of the coaches I've worked with have been terrific in terms of giving me access and letting me know, trusting me, I guess, because they'll let me know, hey, this kid's dealing with this or that. Obviously, it's not stuff I'm going on air with, but you start to understand, okay, yeah, this kid might be a little off today. Let's not pounce on him for being a little off, because some of the things that are happening at home or at school or whatever it may be. And so, I've appreciated that about all of the coaches. John was another one that was really competitive. I think the one thing that may have hurt him is he's just genuinely a friendly guy, and I don't know that a head coach necessarily needs to be, like your best friend. And I think John just genuinely cared about his kids so much that he wanted to help them in every way he could. And again, his personality is just so engaging that I think, if there was a criticism of him, it was probably that he was just too. I think he had a more difficult time being the disciplinarian and bringing that component of it in to the coaching, because again, he genuinely cared about those kids, and I think looked at them as friends at the end of the day.
That's interesting, because John and his brother Bernie used to beat the crap out of me in a wrestling room, and I never felt that concern.
I can understand that perspective.
I'm kidding, John, if you're listening, but it's true. All right. Anything else for Lorenzo or Sanderson before we move on, or any of their assistants?
Well, sure, Uishi, I think, going back to Lorenzo, Fritz and Uishi were just such big parts of that success. And I just think it was that team, to me, was the most remarkable team of coaches I had ever seen until Cal came in. And, what Cal, Cody, and Casey are doing, I guess it is appreciated. I don't know that it's possible to appreciate it enough.
Yeah.
Because to have three guys that are that successful and they could all be head coaches pretty much anywhere that they wanted. But they have a wonderful chemistry together. There's that trust that they have with each other, and I think they have a shared vision for the program and what they want. Again, not just in terms of winning championships, that's obviously part of the equation, but I think they're just very much on the same page. Let's do this the right way. Let's figure out how to get the best kids, not just wrestlers that we can in here, and and they're always forward thinking. And Rich Lorenzo was much that way too. I mean, Rich took this program from a really good level and put it on the national stage, and was insistent that they wrestle the Iowas and the Oklahoma States to test themselves and to gauge where it was that they needed to improve to be able to be competitive, year in and year out, trying to compete for national titles. Rich obviously had an affinity for Eastern wrestling. And I think when Penn State moved to the Big Ten, he was not thrilled with that because he and I think it rightfully was concerned that it was going to hurt Eastern wrestling. And I think at the end of the day, he was right. I mean, I don't think the rest of Eastern wrestling. There's been some great teams here and there. Pitt's done a remarkable job the last couple of years. Obviously, had Edinburgh with that third place finish, had a great year. But I think overall, it probably was a bit of a setback for Eastern wrestling as we knew it. But I also think it ended up helping set the stage, obviously, for what Cale's been able to do. But yeah, Rich Lorenzo and Cale Sanderson, to me, are just the epitome of what you want in a coach in terms of their morals and ethics, and then their ability to lead young men and put them in the position, at least, to create opportunities for success for themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, good stuff. Going back to your broadcasting, you're known for your excitable calling of the action. Do you ever find it hard to get up for a match? Like, does it ever happen?
I don't, and it's funny because a couple people asked me that with, a couple of the rougher years before Cale came in here. And again, for me, just being at the matches, and you can always find something. I mean, Penn State, had a losing record the one year I remember, but there were a lot of close matches, and I'm like, well, would you rather be in the position Penn State's in now where you're dominating? Sure, but there's also a lot of fun in being able to see 10 or 12, matches that are decided by, 3 to 6 points. And so, and for me, the excitement comes just with the respect I have for the sport and the kids that are out there, and not just for Penn State. I mean, I really do respect anybody that's willing to go out there, because it is just you out there. I mean, you don't have any excuses, and it does take a special kind of courage. And in some ways, and I've talked about this before, that obviously you respect the heck out of what the Bo Nichols and the David Taylors of the world have done, but to be honest with you, the guys that go out there and are having losing seasons or struggle just to try to get to an NCAA tournament, it is, I think, easy to justify the work that you have to put into a sport like wrestling when you get the results that a Bo Nickol or David Taylor does. Not everybody has that talent, and there's a different drive there and all of it. But there are guys, and I think at Penn State, guys like Adam Lynch, who's does a phenomenal job as director of operations. That guy put absolutely everything he had into the sport, and I think Cale will tell you today that he's still, if not the most coachable, among the most coachable he ever had. Did everything exactly as the coach has asked, and so. Again, I really respect anybody that's willing to step out on that mat, and I think it's exciting just to see the competition. So, I don't, maybe there was a day where I'm like, I don't know about this meet or this match, but I can't think of one. I genuinely just get excited about being able to watch these guys go out and compete and see what happens. And again, there's different things that you're watching for in different matches. Sometimes it's how many different ways can this guy score or rack up pins, and in other cases it's, can this guy find a way to win or keep this match close or whatever it might be. But there's always something there that I think that's intriguing that you're looking for and watching for, and to me that's exciting.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, to me, one of the examples of, all right, it's fantastic, the David Taylors, the Ed Ruths, the Bo Nichols, but like when Marco Vespa took the mat with Spencer Lee, this kid doesn't have a D1 victory in college. He's beaten exactly one Division III guy. And he went out there, took him down, and put him on his back. Like, it's insane. Like, just incredible.
Yeah, and that is one of those things, you talk about just sports in general, right? That one of the reasons you go as a sports fan is you never know if you're going to see something that you've never seen before on that given day. And especially in a sport like wrestling, you truly do never know. That opportunity there for Marco Vespa to pin Spencer Lee, I mean, it is there. Is it likely? No. Is it, are we actually going to see it? Probably not, but you don't know until those matches occur. And yeah, that was, for as amazing as this season has been, and I think, hope for the program's sake that the best is yet to come. I don't know that it's possible to match the 5 seconds or so of exhilaration that Marco Vespa provided there, even if Penn State goes out and crowns 6 national titleists and wins the championship going away. I don't know that you're going to be able to match, again, those 5 seconds for just pure exhilarations and, can you believe what you're seeing type stuff.
Right. And then, like, over a tournament, maybe James English, the late James English. I mean, there's so many things you can point to over this run that are just, they're special. You don't see it very often, and you got to appreciate it.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of kids. I mean, James English becoming an All-American after all of the back problems that he had and neck problems, and actually he's helping out at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Or the M2 training center now with David Taylor every now and then, and I've seen him a couple of times down there, and he's just again a remarkable person. And I think you think back to James Yanoshonis and what he was able to accomplish, and there's just been a lot of kids, and again some of them that were never All-Americans that just that I have a deep appreciation for just because of the work ethic and what they were able to put into it. And I always go back to that first Big Ten title that Penn State won with Cale in 2011. And I mean, we always talk about you never know if you're going to need every point. Well, they needed every point. They needed every half point to beat Iowa in that Big Ten tournament. It was just such a special moment because you had guys coming through that weren't champions, but that Penn State absolutely needed the wins and the bonus points to be able to dethrone Iowa at that point. And that's obviously before NCAA's, but I think to that point, at least in my lifetime, it was probably the biggest moment. Again, to that point in the program's history, and again, I'm going back to the early 70s for my recollection of following it. Obviously, they had won a national title in the 50s, but it's been a special stuff. And again, it's a lot of the individuals that I have a deep appreciation for and affinity for are the guys that didn't win national titles, but that just fought and clawed for everything they were able to get out there.
Applying this to yourself, how do you strive to improve from match to match or year to year? Like, what do you have? Do you listen to yourself? Like, what's your process?
I do, and there's still I will cringe at myself on different things. You try to be ready for the moment, and the two things that I probably still need to work on the most that drive me the most crazy is I'll get too caught up sometimes on a specific either call or point that I think I should be making regarding rules or whatever. And it's like, just leave that for discussion later. You don't need to be getting that into it during the match. Focus on the action. So I try to do a better job of focusing just on the action. Sometimes I still can't help myself, and so, but I still am working on that. And I also, I do go back and listen. I think the other thing that I want to do is to try to give fans the opportunity to kind of appreciate, and there have been some calls that I think I've done a good job, but others it's like it's okay to just be quiet and let the ambient sound of the crowd going crazy, obviously mention takedown for the win, but then go ahead and wait a few seconds, let the radio audience be able to hear that the crowd is just roaring and shut up every now and then.
Interesting.
But yeah, I try to critique myself. There are still little things that I'll pick apart of myself with just not getting to a point or not calling something quite the way I think it should have been called as it's happening. But that's, again, all stuff that you always strive for. And I just think of Cal all the time talking about nobody ever wrestles the perfect match and you never have the perfect season. He talks about you could probably have 10 national titles and you still are going to feel like there was something there. I question that when Cal says that, but I understand the point that there's always stuff that any of us in any profession can work to improve on.
So I've misspoken a couple times just in our conversation. Do you have a policy on if you say something that's not correct? Do you sometimes let it go? It's like I hear you sometimes correct after the fact. I'm just curious where you're at.
Yeah, I will try to correct. There have been a couple of times where I tend to get absent-minded, and so I need to make little notes to myself, or I forget about it. I do try to correct the record, and it's still driving me crazy going back to I misidentified the Maryland heavyweight actually just this past weekend. They had both guys weigh in, and I knew that I needed to check that ahead of time, but Neville's got out there, and I never even looked over at the score to check. I mean, we went through the whole broadcast. I mean, it's still, if you only listen to the radio broadcast, you still think Smith is who Neville's pinned, and that was just oversight on my part and not double checking who was out there. I just kind of assumed, which you should never do, that why would you not wrestle Smith if he weighed in? But I did know. I mean, I had that marked down to verify, and I just never did. I got caught up in the action right from the start and never verified that. So but yes, if I realize a mistake has been made, I will, and I don't correct it. It's just because I got absent-minded. I always try to remember to go back and correct it, and it drives me crazy when something doesn't get corrected like that, and that'll lead me probably at least until the Clary match and maybe beyond.
It's funny because my resolution on that feed was so bad, and Smith is bumped up in weight class. I was like, well, I can't tell if that's him. I recognize him I think it was 97. But, when a kid bumps up like Stefanik from Princeton, I barely recognize him now. Like, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, moving on. You've won a lot of broadcasting awards. Does any one particular one stand out?
Probably the one that stands out the most, and it's just because of the fact that it was the first, right? Like anytime you're the first to do anything, that there's a little extra significance to it. And so Win hands out their Journalist of the Year, and I was the first radio broadcaster to win it. So that was a little extra special just because of that. I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing. I'm sure Cal will tell you that all of the national titles mean a lot, and every season's different. But winning that first one, there's just something special about that. And it's not that there couldn't be something else that you win down the road that's more special or more significant, but there is something special when you're the first to do something. So that one probably holds for me a little extra meaning. The other one that means a lot to me personally, just because of the people that presented it, is the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club presented me with the Solkowski Award one year, which is just dedication to somebody not a wrestler helping the program and serving the program. And that one meant a lot too, and held significance for me because my sister, who has since passed from breast cancer, but her and her family came up and surprised me being at the banquet that weekend, and so that was kind of just an extra special little treat for me to have that honor presented and with all of my family at the time there.
Okay. And you have a long career. You've done a lot of different coverages, but do you have, a top 5 of broadcasting that you still think about today of things that you've called?
I don't know that I have a top 5. There are certainly some things that stand out over the years. Jason Nolf's pen of Isaiah Martinez is still one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. Just the way he did it, and the fact that Martinez, understandably so, there was a lot of speculation that this might be the guy that's able to match Cale in terms of being a 4-time undefeated national champion, and he was on his way to doing that before that pin. So that one stands out. As far as the NCAA championships, Kerry McCoy, just what he had gone through, his first title as a sophomore, because you saw him when he made the move up to heavyweight, he just became a completely different person. He was miserable that freshman year, and he was the quietest kid. Very nice, but I just didn't get to know him at all because he didn't talk, and it was because he was miserable cutting weight, and he had obviously a tough season, and I had no idea. I knew he was a good wrestler, and I knew he could be better than what he was. I had no idea that he was going to go out and dominate the heavyweight division the way he did. And just watching him and his mom hug in the stands after he won that first title was really very special stuff. I think Nico Megaludis finally winning the title, and I know it meant so much to him and his family, and I think that was really special. Obviously, the two that'll stand out forever, I think, in terms of the both my call and what they meant in the moment was Vincenzo Joseph, then Penny Martinez for the title, and obviously the Bo Nickel pin of Miles Martin, because of what that meant, obviously, for Bo, but also for the team clinching the championship and what was just a really tight and fun race between Penn State and Ohio State that year. And, Roger Moore, who did the color commentary for years for Oklahoma State wrestling, he and I got to be good friends, and he came over to me after that because, of course, I'm, in the moment, I'm thinking, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And Roger comes over as I'm cleaning everything up and getting ready to head back to the hotel. He says, "Hey, that was the greatest moment in NCAA tournament history, just so you know." And this is an Oklahoma State guy telling you that. I'm like, well, I appreciate that because I thought so. But that moment, obviously, it's going to be pretty hard to top that individual moment. But again, there's been so many great stories over the years, right? James English and beating the returning national champion for 7th place to, put the finishing touch on a career where he just overcame so much. There's been a lot of really special moments along the way, and I could keep going probably for hours here as I start thinking back on it. But in terms of championship moments, it'd be pretty hard to top Vincenzo Joseph and Bo Nickel. And Nickel, again, if you had to pick out one moment that kind of defines everything here for Penn State wrestling, I think, again, it would be hard-pressed to find one that would top that.
Right.
Pretty special stuff.
All good moments. The only thing I'll add is that I used to know Kerry back in the day, and I still know him, obviously, but he's not a small heavyweight, and he was making the cut to whatever, I don't know what the weight class was then, 89 or 90 or 90, anyway. He put on so much weight.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he was unrecognizable, but he looked like a different human being, right? Like
he absolutely did.
And he wasn't fat.
And his personality, like all of a sudden, it's like, oh man, this guy's a lot of fun and cool to hang around. Right. It was just, it was that whole season for him was pretty special. But watching again that moment with his mom was just really neat to see.
Gotcha. You have been one of the few broadcasters and people with a following who's commented on the football scandal from a dozen years ago. Do you have any thoughts? I'm going to be doing a podcast with John Ziegler with the benefit of hindsight. Any thoughts on that for wrestling fans?
Yeah, I guess I would encourage. I'm just a big believer in general in pursuing the truth and trying to get to the the facts about what actually has happened with anything. I'm just I think you need to be open-minded, and when you see all of the flaws with the criminal justice system and tons of mistakes have been made over the years. And again, I don't know that necessarily that it's because of negligence or anybody intentionally doing anything wrong. But I think it is easy to see, again, not just with that case, but you go back through history where a narrative gets written and it's completely wrong, and then it takes years, and often I'm sure there's cases that we will never know about that we got wrong. That somebody died in prison and to this day is assumed guilty. That instinctively that has to be the case. I think with the situation with Sandusky, it just it's unfortunate on so many different levels, but I think the fact that nobody was willing to just sit back and say, wait, let's sort through what's actually being alleged here. And there was just such a rush to judgment. And, I think there were some that were, wanting to be able to pin something on Joe Paterno, and here was their opportunity. But if you just sat back for a moment and thought about it, it doesn't make any sense. Taking just the Joe Paterno part of it is, why would Joe Paterno want a pedophile hanging around the program? And this is when Jerry Sandusky is no longer a coach. So, it makes no sense. Everybody's like, well, he just protected the football program. How is that protecting the football program? Just stop and think for a second. If you know he's a pedophile, right, and you knew it, let's say you knew it and you wanted to keep him as coach because he was that great of a defensive coordinator, let's play that out for a moment. What is the purpose, once he retires, of allowing him access to your program where you have the potential of him bringing it down? It makes zero sense. If he knew about it and all of this stuff was happening, he would say, Jerry, we let you get away with this for all these years, but you got to do this somewhere else now. We've got to protect the image of the program. Just that part of it never made any sense to me. And as John Ziegler has pointed out, and also from a conspiracy standpoint, why does Joe Paterno take this information and he rolls the university? Why does he go share this information that he finds from Mike McQuarrie with Dr. Spanier and with Tim Curley? And again, it just makes no sense. And to me, and I like Mike McQuarrie. I don't have any personal grievance with Mike McQuarrie, but what always amazed me looking back on it, and listen, by the way, in the heat of the moment, I'm caught up in it, and I'm reading through the grand jury report, and I'm not knowing, I'm naive enough to think that anything that's in a grand jury report is factual. So I'm reading through this, and I'm like, holy God. And Jerry Sandusky and his family, the neighborhood that I lived in when I was a kid that I was talking about earlier, we were 3 houses down from the Sandusky. So, I grew up with, They're kids. They had their daughter was my sister's age. EJ was my age, and so I spent untold hours in their yard and driveway playing basketball and football and all of that as a kid. But I'm reading through this grand jury report, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy was a monster, and we never even knew it. And then, as you start to peel everything back, it's like, wait, McQuarrie didn't say what the grand jury said, the report said
right.
He saw. And then you start unraveling everything else. And what still amazes me is that there was such a rush to, Mike McQuarrie has to be telling the truth. And again, this isn't, I'm just trying to look at this objectively, but Mike McQuarrie bet on college football games, was posting inappropriate pictures, to say the least, to co-eds when he was married. I mean, there's a long list of character flaws there, and I get it. We all have them. Again, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but why was there such a rush to, this is the guy we have to believe, over guys who have put together decades worth of reputations that were stellar? And Joe Materno, Tim Curley, I mean, you couldn't find people that had better reputations, better public records, and the people to this day that know them best will tell you that there's no way. There's no way a Tim Curley is intentionally covering up for a pedophile, or Joe Materno, or
Graham Spanier, who was a victim of child abuse himself. Anyway.
Yes, and Gary Schultz. I mean, these people all had impeccable reputations, and yet we threw those out, and right away we believed the worst in them, while believing that there's no way that the story Mike McQuarrie was telling, which, by the way, he didn't even tell. The story that we were told he was telling isn't what he actually said, but we are to automatically believe him when, again, there were holes in what he was saying, one, and again, there were known character flaws with, and significant character flaws, and this was a young man that was still, pretty young and still trying to find his way in life. I don't know, there's a lot of it that just does not make sense, and I just give John Ziegler all the credit in the world for being willing to stay on it as doggedly as he has. I know it's been to his own detriment, and he's talked about it many times. But and I know John's personality rubs some people the wrong way, and I've had some people tell me, that guy's a loon. Why would you listen to him? I'm like, well, because at the end of the day, I can't find flaw in the facts that he's presenting. You might not like the way he's presenting it. You might not like the way that, consider him bombastic or whatever, but at the end of the day, what he's laying out makes a heck of a lot more sense than what was presented in the media and what I think many still believe to this day. It just, to me, it makes a lot more sense. And by the way, I am open-minded enough that if there are facts out there that, by God, Jerry Sandusky did do all of these things, and here's the proof. I'm not so beholden to my position that, I'm not open to changing. But, boy, everything I've seen so far, it does not make any sense. And to me, it is pretty clear at this point that we have, again, a lot of reputations ruined for no good reason, and I think we have an innocent man. I'm pretty close to feeling like I know we have an innocent man in Jerry Sandusky, likely spending the rest of his life in prison.
Well said. If you're a seeker of truth, check out With the Benefit of Hindsight. 2 last questions, and I'll get you out of here. If you could go back and give yourself any advice, or someone who's young and starting out in broadcasting today, any advice for yourself or a youngster out there?
Yeah, I think just take advantage of the opportunities. Again, I kind of fell into everything, but part of it was that my friend said, "Hey, you want to take a chance on coming up to the campus station?" So yeah, let's try that. Let's see what it's about. And if somebody offers you an opportunity to cover something, do it. And if it's something that you're not familiar with, go ahead and check it out, get as knowledgeable as you can, as quickly as you can, and take advantage of it, because you don't know where the opportunities are going to be, and you don't know when something might open that leads you down a path that you weren't expecting. And worst case scenario, you try broadcasting a soccer game, and it's like, oh, I don't like soccer, and I don't want to do that again. Cool. Now you got that experience under your belt. But I think more often than not, you're going to find, oh man, there's some really neat things here that I didn't know about, and can further my education on. And I just think the biggest thing is, don't be afraid to make connections, and don't be afraid to tackle anything that's given to you. Don't shy away from an assignment that's given to you.
Gotcha. Last question, maybe second last. I keep adding them in my mind as you trigger things. Is there anything I should have asked you? Or if there's not, what energizes you most about wrestling broadcasting?
Yeah, for me, it really is. I love radio because of the intimacy, and I mean, I love listening to radio broadcasts. As a kid, I used to listen to radio broadcasts, and we would go up to Canada for a summer vacation, family vacation every year, and I always loved it because at night you could get signals from all over the place. We were, probably about, I'm trying to think, maybe 4 hours north of Toronto where we went, and I loved listening to just different broadcasts from around the country with baseball, and but the intimacy of radio, where you are trying to paint that picture for the play-by-play broadcasting. I love the challenge of that, and I love the connection that I feel, and I think most people feel, with the listener and host or broadcaster, and I love that connection, and the fact that the fans are kind of along with me for the ride. At least that's the hope, and that's the goal, is that you're providing them that opportunity to see something that they're listening to. And probably the biggest compliment I've gotten, I've had a couple people reach out to me that have friends that are blind, and they're like, we really appreciate you being able to let them see wrestling matches, because they wouldn't otherwise get to. And that's just, I really take that to heart. That's really a very special thing to be told that somebody that is absolutely relying on you is feeling like they are seeing it because of the picture you're painting. And that's obviously the goal. I don't know that we always achieve that, but it's nice to hear that some people are getting that type of experience out of it.
It's interesting that you say that, because someone who follows me is visually impaired, and they talk about you in messages to me a number of times. So that's a big deal. I'll get you out of here on this. Is there anybody, as a fan, like, I love wrestling, I love sports, but I love wrestling, anybody you'd recommend I talk to?
Oh, boy. Boy, I got to think about that one. There's a lot of, I will tell you that the coolest conversation I've been able to overhear, and I mean, it wasn't like I was sneaking around. I was sitting there in the hallway, but Dan Gable came over, I think was this was last year after the Iowa match out there, and came over specifically. This was after the match, so we're outside of the locker room and waiting for the team to finish up and head over on the bus. And Gable comes over and asked if Kale was in there, and I said yeah, and they brought him out, and they talked for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and it wasn't like any great insight in terms of let's compare notes of how we coach or anything, but it was just really cool to hear Gable talk about his appreciation for what Kale was doing, and the team that he had put together. And they did swap a little bit of just how cool it is to be involved in the sport, and the kids that they both have been able to coach over the years. So that was just cool. I'm just trying to think in terms of. I mean, there's just so many great personalities in the sport, and so many. I mean, I do love talking to the older wrestlers. I mean, John Fritz just has great stories. Obviously, Rich Lorenzo is just an unbelievable wealth of information in terms of the sport and what it can do and provide. I don't know that it's more than I don't know that there's anybody I wouldn't want to talk to that's involved in wrestling. There really have just been some great coaches and great wrestlers. And again, I'm not even talking about the championship coaches and the championship wrestlers, just guys that have given a lot to the sport. And I'll tell you, I don't know that he would do an interview, but Dan Monthly, the trainer for Penn State, and I'm fortunate enough to room with him on the trips. But you talk about a guy that has an unbelievable knowledge and appreciation for the sport, and being able to help these kids recover from injuries more quickly than they otherwise would be able to, and kind of understand, okay, we need to do this to get you through the season, and then we'll, get the corrective measures after the year, that type of thing. Again, I don't know that he'd be a great interview if you could get him to come on and open up. I don't know that he's willing to do that, but I suspect there's a lot of people like that in the sport that are around it. And know a lot of the things that are going on that you don't necessarily ever hear from. And again, in a lot of cases, maybe it's because they don't want to ever share those stories, some of them. But I think, think about the trainers and the managers and those people over the years. I think that's probably where some of the best true insight comes from. I don't know how many of those people would be willing to share
right.
publicly some of the things that they have.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, and enjoy the rest of the season, I guess, and good luck going forward.
I will definitely enjoy the rest of the season. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.